Good evening, everyone. Greetings. Welcome, dear Gültekin.
Good evening, dear Tülin. Good evening, dear friends.
Last week, we made an introduction to the topic of dreams, and read and discussed the mechanism of dreams that occur due to the external influences. This evening, we will read and discuss about the mechanism of dreams that occur due to the influences coming from above, that is, higher levels of the physical realm we live in, let's say, from spiritual guides, from beings in duty, from other disembodied beings. Before we continue reading, let me repeat a few things from last week. We don't see dreams, but we imagine them. In this imagination, mental and emotional imagery restored daily in the unconscious. And also, mental and emotional imagery of the past lifetimes that restored in the subconscious are used. For more details about the new model of consciousness introduced by the Divine Order and the Universe, please watch our previous videos in this series. Alright, let's continue reading. Let us come to the mechanism of dreams whose reason is connected to the higher places, higher consciousness. When a being wants a man to have a dream for some purpose, it sends vibrations pertaining to the dream which it will show him to the higher consciousness field of the being which that man is subject to. These influences sent to the higher consciousness pass to the consciousness via the channel of the unconscious and increase the frequencies of the molecules of the center expressing consciousness. This state brings about the comprehensions of the impressions pertaining to the incoming vibrations in the consciousness. And this happens as follows. At that time, consciousness is actually turned towards the unconscious. Because the influences coming from above are purposeful, each of these comes down as adjusted in order to evoke a required impression which exists in the unconscious. And these adjusted influences descending to the consciousness, which is actually in connection with the unconscious, results in consciousnesses receiving the required impressions from the unconscious. And comprehension of images coming from the unconscious occurs in the consciousness. So, the being that wants to show the dream, by sending adjusted influences according to qualities of innumerable materials in the unconscious, ensures the taking out of materials it wants from among these towards the consciousness field. Thus, this kind of dreams occurs as well through imagination. Dreams coming from above or below can easily be discerned by more or less experienced mankind. The ones coming from below are rather disarrayed, vague, and dim. The ones coming from the higher consciousness are ordered, vivid, and deeply impressive.
You had mentioned the new model of consciousness introduced in this book. Yes. If our dear friends watch the previous videos of this series or read the book, this new model, as an idea or a scheme, might have been established in their minds. Because what is explained in this passage is very clear, still if you don't have prior information, it may sound complicated to you. Yes, if a certain message needs to be sent to a person, vibrations related to that message and dream are sent to the higher consciousness of the being of that person. As you remember, our beings are the vehicles of our spirit, and our bodies are the vehicles of our beings. And in such a dream, the higher consciousness of the being is shown to the person. Yet, these vibrations need to be translated to mental and/or emotional imagery to make the person comprehend the message. Again, if you remember, our unconscious is the field where our daily impressions in life are stored after going through an initial filtering by the conscience mechanism as we sleep each day. And because this field is a buffer or a bridge between our consciousness and superconsciousness, next step for those vibrations is to pass to the consciousness of the person via the field of unconscious, and to increase the frequencies of the molecules at the related centers of the brain. And during sleep, our consciousness is turned inward, toward the unconscious, and all centers of the brain are closed to the external stimuli. So, nothing impedes this increasing of the frequencies of the molecules at the related centers of the brain. And now, please remember that we are talking about a highly subtle energy, and the purpose of this process is to convey a knowledge, an information to the mind of a person by images. And the purpose of such dreams may be a warning, a premonition, a firm clue to help the person in comprehending things. Last week, we had used a metaphor or simile for our unconscious, saying that it is like an image bank, and it is full of mental and emotional imagery closely related with our personality, our personal life, etc. Now, let me use another simile. Let's say I will make a PowerPoint presentation with a specific topic, and I choose many images related to this topic and put these together as a video clip or a slideshow, but of course not randomly, but within the frame of some editing or montage or assembling. And when I share this presentation with you, you get a clear idea and information of the topic I want to convey you. Indeed, the being does the same, prepares an editing or montage or a video clip by choosing related images from our image bank, from our imagery materials, and because the frequency of the related and desired center is increased. The content or message or the topic of this fiction is perceived, understood, and comprehended at that center. Last week, we had discussed the first type of dreams, that is, dreams occurs due to external stimulus, and the images evoked couldn't be comprehended in general. However, in this second type of dreams we are discussing now, the message must be understood. Because of this process is different. Although the whole simile and metaphors are crude matter combinations, yet this example of editing a video clip from the image bank allows me to understand this process better, but I hope this is also helpful for our dear friends as well.
This passage evokes some associations in my mind, as well. Let's say we are the biological computer of our being, and the brain of our body is the central processing unit of this computer. This immense system of brain works as a processor managing centers and parts of this computer. The capacity of this processor is influenced by your genetic material, by the environment you are born into, by how you are fed and nurtured. This processor has a certain data storage capacity, a certain process speed, etc., and these are different for each human. Yes, there are already different types of files in this processor. The built-in or hereditary files of DNA, not only of the parents but of a lineage of ancestors. And this processor, like a sponge, absorbs all impressions from the mother starting from the moment it is a fetus in the womb. As we live day by day, especially between 0 and 5 years period, we collect and store all perceptions and impressions and stimuli within the memory cache of this processor by making new and consolidated neurological connections. And we don't make any distinction among them, saying this is mine and this is not mine. It is like the cloud we are uploading and restoring our files. Now, let's imagine that you have a psychological situation related to a fear, and the being in duty that is working as your guide plans to make you experience an educational state related to this fear. And what happens when such influences arrive at your magnetic field? As you said, the images, experiences are stored in the image bank, but with which program this influence packet will be opened? Similar to the process your computer asks you this question about new files, our brain detects this influence's frequency of vibrations first, and because this influence must be transformed into an image, our brain chooses the most suitable images that more or less match the vibrations of the influence among the innumerable images stored in this image bank or cloud, by scanning the whole content of this bank within nanoseconds. And by the image or images resonating most with the message of the influence sent becomes perceivable, understandable, and comprehensible for the related centers of our brain. And here, at the end of the paragraph, we read this important knowledge. The ones coming from below are rather disarrayed, vague, and dim. The ones coming from the higher consciousness are ordered, vivid, and deeply impressive. If we ate too much at dinner and continued with snacks until we go to bed, the troubling images chosen for the nightmare we may have will be suitable for the indigestion warning coming from our stomach, and we forget this easily when we wake up. However, some dreams we had are still vivid in our memory because the influence such dreams carried are still important and strong. So, we read here how we can discern these types of dreams.
I am sure each of us has such impressive dreams time to time. Years ago, I had a few dreams about my health. In those dreams, my right hand is to be amputated. I am in a shock, but at the same time I say, well, this is meant to be, etc. And when I wake up, remembering the details of these dreams, I was asking to myself, what was the message of this dream? Is it a warning about something? Was it about a past life memory, or is it related to an ongoing situation? The feeling I am left with was serious. I couldn't shake it off. The images of the dreams stayed with me. Eventually, I said to myself, if this is a sign of something bad, maybe I can prevent this. Then I went to a doctor, pretending that I have this and that aches and pains in my wrist. After examining my arm and wrist, the doctor told me that, good that you came before it is too late, otherwise the problem in your wrist could be harder to solve. And he asked me, how did you notice this problem? Was it the pain or something else? Of course, I couldn't tell him that I had those dreams. Well, after simple operation, the problem is solved and the dreams stopped. Of course, what I experienced as an operation was maybe about transforming some energies within my system. But back then, I had concluded that the mechanism of guidance and assistance from the beings in duty exists and working even in individual level. And throughout the human history, there are examples of dreams that assisted humans to inventions, to discoveries, etc. And soon we will read about the mechanism of such dreams.
Let's read that passage, then. As is seen in this mechanism, in the latter group, that is, in dreams connected to the influences coming from above, there are purposeful devices addressing rather the consciousness. These aim to teach man certain things. These dreams are shown for various reasons, such as revealing some stages of future events that need to be known for essential reasons, giving warnings in the face of some situations, or delivering intuitions of some necessary knowledge. Nonetheless, there are no stirrings in the universe that can be outside the control and directive of the unitary. Starting from a single motion to all motions of universe, every stirring is subject to the directives of the unitary. Therefore, upon seeing that we use terms like random, unconnected for the dream coming from below, it should not be thought that we mean by this that they are futile and unnecessary. There is no motion or occurrence in universe that is unnecessary, meaningless, or futile. Our usage of the terms above for the dreams coming from below is relative to the dreams which are connected to the influences coming from higher consciousness. They, as well, have their own particular ways of execution. They, as well, occur in another devised and calculated way. Thusly, as they are pondered upon, many things are learned and gained. So, in the dreams seen by the influences coming from above, materials in the unconscious are used as images. In the ones coming from the surroundings, images are constituted by the materials taken from the subconscious. Nonetheless, if the being wanting to show the dream sees it necessary to put into effect its purpose, it utilizes not only knowledge pertaining to this world life in the unconscious, but also some knowledge from the subconscious, belonging to past lives. Naturally, images taken from the subconscious in this way are rather devised and proper, not like the flimsy images taken from the influences coming from surroundings. After giving this knowledge, explaining the mechanism of mediumship becomes easier. Yes, just as stated in this passage, as well. These dreams are shown for various reasons, such as revealing some stages of future events that need to be known for essential reasons, giving warnings in the face of some situations, or delivering intuitions of some necessary knowledge. Let's say you have a dream about the looming death of a parent, of a family member, of a friend, of an accident, etc. So, such dreams have a preparatory characteristic. Had that person experienced this event without such warning and preparation, she or he experienced a debilitating shock. So, with this prior information, the organism goes through an acclimatization. And in your own example, you had those dreams and you took these as a warning and went to a doctor, and it turned out that your body, the beings in duty governing your body, had warned you by sending strong influences that evoked related imagery during your sleep. And you mentioned that one of the questions you asked yourself was about if these dreams were past life memories or not. Well, this was a valid question because sometimes we have such dreams that contain images from different time periods or even from different habitats of life, and such dreams may be repeating with more or less same content. Sometimes, the reason is to turn our attention to the concept of past lives, and sometimes, the reason is to point to an unfinished business from a past life that is triggered in our current life and needs to be resolved. As to repeating dreams, when people have some ongoing troubles, they may have dreams about the similarly troubling but earlier periods of their current life. For example, dreams of schooling years despite they are now adults and not a student anymore, or dreams about some old workplace despite they are retired years ago. The reason may be that some parts of their energy, some parts of their magnetic field remained there due to some fragmentation or due there over mental concentration during those troubling times. If you have such dreams, you can take a few deep breaths and tell yourself firmly, I am not there anymore. I am not that or this that years old anymore. I am now this or that years old. That period of my life is over. Now, I am retrieving, claiming, and collecting all my energetic parts back. Well, there are also dreams that led to many discoveries and inventions. For example, Dr. James Watson saw a spiral staircase in a dream and he developed the idea of a double helix spiral structure for our DNA. Dmitry Mendeleev saw in a dream a table where all the elements fell into place as required, and this led to the periodic table we now use. Niels Bohr saw the nucleus of the atom with electrons spinning around it, like planets going around the sun, etc. Or, well, that one impresses me much, the invention of the sewing machine. Around 1840s, there are many inventors were working on a properly working sewing machine, but only Elias Howe managed this after he dreamt that he'd been captured by cannibals who gave him an ultimatum. He had to invent a sewing machine within 24 hours or suffer a painful death. He failed, so they stabbed him repeatedly with spears, but their spears had a hole in the tip. That was the clue Howe was searching for. Obviously, such dreams do not occur without a reason. When a person concentrates on some idea or a gadget or a hypothesis, she or he spends effort, projects a major part of his or her consciousness in that direction, and consequently, transmits a certain frequency from his or her magnetic field. And in turn, attracts help and assistance as a dream in similar frequency. I think you remember when some people visited our society after the 2011 earthquake in Japan, telling us that they saw this mega earthquake in their dreams. And we had discussed with them about the reasons of such dreams. Some of them felt guilty of not talking about their dream, but even if they could have warned the authorities, would this prevent this earthquake? Of course, not. This is valid for the most prophetic dreams. Because of this fact, we had asked those people, what did you do after that dream? Did you just worry about this message? Or did you see this maybe as an invitation to give a helping hand by praying for the easy transition of all those people that would die in such a big earthquake? Because, if you remember the passages we read about the prayers and praying in the divine order and the universe, we learn that the power of intention behind a prayer can elevate its frequency to higher levels. So, praying with such sincere intention for the easy transition of the humans die during such disasters may have immensely beneficial results. Because everything is in motion, everything vibrates. And since the first page of this book, we read that everything happens due to the interaction of the beings in this matter universe. Therefore, it would be better for us to stop saying, "This is just a dream," because, from the dreams that occur due to external impressions to the dreams that occur due to the influences coming from above, we receive messages edited and montaged with our own imagery material by this magnificent interaction. It is better for us to stop saying, "This is just a dream," especially to children. Their bad dreams, night terrors and nightmares may be the indications of things that are not all right in their organisms and their environment. It is better to teach our children to trust their dreams for such signs and use their dreams for guidance in life. In the ancient cultures, dreams gave utmost importance. For example, American Indians would sit around the fire and tell the dreams they had during the night, and these dreams are interpreted by the Council of Elders. And if there were signs of looming dangers and sickness, the tribe would take precautions about such possibilities. Yes, in our modern lifestyle, we lost this kind of healthy dream-sharing opportunities, but we can still remember to consider our dreams as opportunities to face our own inner material. And if we become able to understand our psyche and inner world, then we can become able to transform these in the direction of our brains and, of course, of our being's further development.
Yes, as you mentioned, in the shamanic teachings, dreams and dream symbology has a very important role in the health of the individual and of the tribe. But we can do this now as well, because all imagery of our dreams are our own material. Therefore, by writing down or taking short notes about our dreams and later studying and working with these, give us many insights, clues, and messages, which we can utilize in a positive way. First, for our own individual health, and consequently, for the health of our community. So, we must study and understand these passages about the mechanism of dreams. And please understand that one of the most important functions of the dreams, even of the ones that apparently don't have any meaning, but especially of the ones from the superconsciousness, is to make us notice and eventually become aware of the fact that there are many layers of our being. There are directions a human being needs to move towards. There are points a human being needs to be more attentive of. There are things a human being needs to be aware of regarding his or her organism, and of the other layers of his or her being. And through impressive, lingering, and powerful messages, given by the beings in duty, and by our own being through our dreams, we are oriented to these other facets of our existence.
Yes, as you said, sometimes with telepathic messages, sometimes with lucid dream elements when we can manage the flow of a dream, sometimes with the awareness that we are having a dream at that moment, sometimes with premonitions, etc. Dreams make us think about that other side of ourself, and make us aware of the interconnectedness of minds, of the constant exchange of influences among beings, of the fact that this connection is not bound by space and time. Yes, from such fleeting experiences as dreams, we gain such lasting impressions. Our dear friends writing many questions in the chat box about Dream Journal. The books of Robert Moss may be helpful in this regard. Many of you write that you don't dream at all, yet I think you do, but you cannot remember your dreams. If the body is too tired, impressions that may lead to dreams cannot land at the field of consciousness. Or some vitamin deficiency may cause dreamless sleeping. For example, vitamins B6 and B12 increase the possibility of remembering your dreams. Because we know that this imagining we call as dreams occur through neurological connections, and for healthy pathways and connections, we must take care of our precious central processing unit, that is, our brain. Last week, we had mentioned this ages-old advice given when someone is trying to make a serious decision. It is said, "Sleep on it." Indeed, when we sleep, we turn towards to our being, and we evaluate the situation requires our decision with the beings in duty, with our guides. After a thorough assortment of pros and cons of the possible decisions, our guides or beings in duty evoke some imagery from our unconscious to activate certain dream contents. And when we wake up, we say, "I had a dream and saw that this or that decision will not be favorable." Or vice versa. In that sense, dreams are one of the points we are in direct contact with our being and our guides. Yet, do we understand the language of dreams? First, we need to know the symbology that language uses. We need to find out the meanings of those images. However, we read in ancient teachings that a single dream may have 72 different meanings. So, again, we cannot say, just a dream, because each symbol is also connected to an archetype, etc. As you can see, a dream may open many gateways for learning about our own, as well as, general human psyche. Soon, we will read passages on the topic of mediumship, and already, our friends are asking questions about telepathy, extrasensory perceptions, etc. Let me ask you first. What is your intention? For what will you use, let's say, your telepathic powers? To what end you like to use such powers? How will this serve to my being? Why and for what I wish to have this? These are the questions we need to ask and answer before embarking the journey of enhancing our psychic skills. Because, what we wish for may come true. Let's say, you become very sensitive, your senses heightened, and after a while, things begin to become overwhelming. There are many people who wish to turn off such sensitivities because the consequences have become unendurable. And if they turned them off, years later, they may wish again to turn these on. Yet, before we search ways of turning on or off such heightened senses, we must be well informed about these, their consequences, the burdens they may bring to our own psyche and to our life plan. Yes, we humans are afraid of the unknown, but at the same time we yearn to know the unknown with an ignorant courage, with a blind brevity.
Yes, we cannot go and enhance our telepathic abilities just because the roaming charges are expensive. As you said, we need to understand the real reason behind such wishes and desires of ours. As you may remember well, during our first years as members of our society, we were experimenting with Zener cards. We were having so much fun, and at the same time, learning about the wider dimensions and levels of our psyche. And after reading and learning about all those years of parapsychological research and experiments done by military complex of the West and East, I think that if we need to use our senses in a heightened way, it happens naturally in our daily life. None of us are telepaths, but if needed, we feel and sense things happen to our friends and loved ones. And I think the natural way of such processes is more beneficial for us, human beings.
Yes, we're rather more interested in the horizontal level of communication. I mean, in the physical level of world life, trying to send thoughts from one point to another. But after reading the divine order and the universe, that we need to spend more efforts for the vertical communication, that is, the communication with our own being. And dreams are the way to do this, because we receive direct guidance from our being, but of course, the language of the unconscious and of the subconscious require our efforts for deciphering. And the best way to do this is writing down our dreams, because this will help us in remembering them better, and observing how their influence unfolds during our daily life. Yes, last in this week, we read the passages on the mechanism of dreams, and we learned that we don't see dreams but imagine them, and how the images used in montage of a dream are actually the daily impressions we have and stored in our unconscious. How the higher influences activate dreams by elevating the frequency of molecules in the related centers of consciousness, and how this elevation of frequencies influence the matching images to be picked from the image bank of our unconscious. And we also learnt that the beings in duty and/or our being activate the dreams with intended messages, or dreams occur due to higher conscious influences that are sent to the superconsciousness of the being. A dear friend asks, Are we humans in a kind of simulation training? Well, kind of. We read in this book about the plan of love, that semi-subtle realm where everything happens through imagination, imagery, and visualization, and in a different time comprehension than we now have. Indeed, in dreams, we shift towards time comprehensions than our superficial or linear time comprehension, and we strengthen our imagination power, and this is like a practice, like a simulation training. Yet, there is a difference. Here, in this realm, we use the crude hydrogen matter, and no matter how spiritual and subtle the matter here is, they still need to be processed by our brain and nervous system. On the other hand, when we complete the hydrogen realm and pass to the semi-subtle realm, we will be able to utilize a much different dimension and frequency of matter. We will do applications of that matter. In this sense, there is a difference between these two, yet, there is also a purpose for this simulation.
This metaphor of simulation is fitting when we talk about the developmentary stages of matter and of the being within this hydrogen realm, within this matter universe. The being is built by the spirit as a vehicle to be in service to that spirit until the end of the universe. And the being is built as a conceptual point of an ensemble of influences and energies at the highly energetic, disarrayed matter combinations of the upper levels of hydrogen realm. In that sense, if we think this realm is a simulation, then the being is like an avatar of our spirit. If you play computer games, you know that in general, the hero of the game is a representation of the player. Just like this, the spirit represents itself in the matter universe with the being it built. Therefore, those ancient teachings, or our scholars' words describing this world as an illusory world or Maya, were not so off the mark. Now we have a better description, not illusory but virtual. I mean, from the perspective of the super-universe, this universe, our realm has virtuality as a quality. And maybe we can even say that each one's reality has that quality from the perspective of another's reality. And something I'd like to point out that we use this word dimension when we casually talk about the level of being, but this is not a dimension. It is much more correct if we say sphere, because that level is subject to the spherical time comprehension. Time is not linear there as it is here. And the communication at that level is not limited by language and words. So, it may be better to get used to use more encompassing words while we are here. Yes, the scope of existence is way beyond our wildest dreams and imaginations. Things occur in the energetic levels. And of course, from this immense communication at the level of our being, sometimes tids and bits surface within our daily life, be it in our dreams or in so-called paranormal phenomena. And I arrive at a moral conclusion from all of these discussions. We are not alone. At all. Never. We, as varying levels and stages of a mutual existence, live on as the immense tapestry of the divine order.
Just as we read in this passage, there are no stirrings in the universe that can be outside the control and directive of the unitary. Starting from a single motion to all motions of universe, every stirring is subject to the directives of the unitary. So, within this divine order, within this divine system, there is an immense communication, there is an immense balance, there is an immense harmony, yet, because we live in a system of duality, we perceive appearances in disharmony. Because of this, in order to discover, grasp and reflect the harmony between us and our being, dreams are important. Dreams are the sole mechanisms for our direct connections to our own being, for observing our emotions as they are openly expressed. Hence, we must understand and utilize dreams very well. And as we keep a dream journal and discover the meanings our own symbols, instead of relying on the common interpretations of dream symbols, we will understand our inner world and material better and better. Yes, let's continue reading. Mediumship occurs through influencing, that is, exchanges of vibrations. So, it is necessary for the vibrations coming from the beings to be fitting to the nature of mediums. It is natural that in each world existing in the universe, matter conditions are different. The embodied are always states of formations in grades of the matter conditions of the sphere they exist on. And each of them has their own particular magnetic fields. Because of this, since the incoming vibrations are obliged to find the matter forms which are closest to each state and condition, it is necessary for the vibrations to harmonize with the particular nature of the medium in the world to be adjusted according to their magnetic fields. Around our world, there are many fields of influence extending from density to fluidity. They surround the world almost like concentric circles. Each is a field of influence belonging to the beings in duty. The densest region of influence is the region which is closest to the surface of the world. And this belongs to rather backward beings. Nevertheless, these regions should not be considered concentric by subjecting these to the spatial world. Here, we remind you of the example we previously gave about the functions in the hydrogen mass. So, there are milliards of influence around the world, starting from the dense and extending away to the subtle.
Yes, here in this passage, we read about how the mechanism of this system occurs. Influencing is exchanges of vibrations. Then, vibrations coming from the beings must be fitting to the nature of mediums. Indeed, it is about sympathization. Energies of the sender and of the receiver need to be complementing, or in a fitting level of influence. Well, actually, this is a universal law. That is, between the sender and the receiver there must be harmony in regard to the volume or the intensity of influence. And we read here, it is natural that in each world in the universe, matter conditions are different. As you know, it is stated in almost every spiritual and religious teaching that we humans are made out of clay, that is, soil, earth. Again, we read here the explanation of this. The embodied are always states of formations in grades of the matter conditions of the sphere they exist on. So, this is valid for not only for our planet, but for all celestial bodies in the universe. Consequently, the magnetic fields of those embodied beings are in accordance with the structure of their spheres, because those spheres as well have their own unique magnetic field. Hence, they are sympathized with the magnetic field of their sphere. Well, if the metaphor is apt, let's consider that we left a certain food scrap on a table. Bacteria breed on that food scrap, and they belong to that environment. Because this is a world in itself. They cannot breed somewhere else. Similarly, if other beings need to send some certain knowledge and information as vibrations, they need to find suitable matter form as the receiver, and this is valid for the mediums as well. Also, we read that there are many fields of influence around our planet, extending from density to fluidity, starting from the dense and extending towards to the subtle. Of course, the moment we read this, we imagine concentric circles around the world. But the plan warns us. Don't think these in a three-dimensional way. This is just a metaphor. We are warned in a similar way when we read about the new model of consciousness. Do you remember? As the plan explained, the functions of the unconscious, of the subconscious, of the higher conscious or superconsciousness. We are advised not to think of these as separate parts, but as functions of a whole. So, we must be careful in visualizing these regions of influence around the world. They are not fixed layers, but fluidic layers. Closest ones to our planet start from the dense energy and influences, and as the layers extend outward, they become subtler in energy and influences. In the classic teaching of spiritualism, we had learnt this layering. In regard to energy bodies of a human being, spirit uses intermediate bodies that become denser until its energy reaches to the physical body. Therefore, when we read here that vibrations need to harmonize with the nature of a given medium in the world, vibrations need to be adjusted according to the medium's magnetic field. I think of various transformers or energy stations. The higher energy pass through these so the frequency and intensity of the influence becomes attuned to the level of the intended receiver or the medium.
Yes, as the saying goes, Like attracts like. When you are in a similar situation, state or level of energy, then you have the chance to receive a knowledge. Like listening to a radio. We know that radio waves are always there, in the air. Yet, in order to listen to a certain radio channel to receive information, first we need a working radio receiver, then we need to tune it to the frequency of that radio channel. And this may need fine-tuning because there are too many channels transmitting myriad radio waves. In that sense, the regions around the world have their own wavelength of transmission, and we can receive information, knowledge and influence from the region we are attuned to. So, the important point for us in this passage is the description of the densest region of influence, which is closest to the surface of our world. And this belongs to rather backward beings. Backward, in what sense? You know very well that the world matter is of matter universe, of the hydrogen cosmos. That is, it is crude matter. And because it is crude and dense, its hold on our energy body is strong. That's why we call this hold as earthly cravings or sensuality. If you remember, in this book we read that if the energy of our being is 8 parts, 7 parts of its energy is connected to the brain to govern the physical body. When we die, that 7 parts don't become free right away and join the ever-free part in the perceptual point of comprehension which is our being. After death, our energy body may continue to resonate with the crude matter combinations of our worldly life. Because of this, and in order to properly shed or leave such lingering or hindering influences of the crude matter combinations, our being's energy needs to go through the purifying process of the spatium period. The sentences in this passage about the region which is closest to the world reminded me one of my teachers in regression therapy, dear Roger Woolger. He taught us that beings that are strongly attached to the crude experiences of the world, the beings that couldn't properly sever their ties from the sensuality or the earthly cravings, tend to remain that first region of influence which is closest to the world, and called these as earthbound souls. As in the example of radio waves, it is possible for us humans to tune into higher regions of influence around the world, as it is possible to tune into lower regions. Have you ever used a Ouija board? Years ago, people were so interested in conducting spirit seances to invite the souls to ask them questions. And all those questions they asked were so worldly, full of our worldly and sensual wishes and desires. Will I marry with someone? What is my future job? Will I be rich? How many children I will have? And most probably, some disembodied beings that couldn't sever their worldly ties and remained in the regions of influence close to the world were happy to send influences to these fitting invitations from the embodied beings. After reading this knowledge, we need to be more discerning in regard to the messages received by any spiritual channelings and seances, and to which kind of such messages that we are attracted to.
Again, I remembered another example we frequently use in our public lectures, about how the electrical current in the light bulb of our living room must go through transformers and stations and resistors until the current is decreased enough to activate a light bulb. Had it arrived at the light bulb in the high voltage level, it is generated at a dam, then light bulb and all electrical gadgets would burn or explode.
So, let's say 220 volt is the general standard for human beings. They can receive this level of voltage and utilize it for their life. However, the people we deem as mediums are able to reach up the higher levels of voltage and to increase their capacity of resonating in those level of vibrations. Hence, they are able to contact and to receive knowledge and information at those higher levels, and also, they are able to express these in the lower or cruder matter combinations. Let's read this short passage as well. Any influence to descend from a higher than planetary source to a man in the world is in a different subtlety in ratio to the structure of that man. In this state, there is no sympathy between them. Therefore, that influence cannot descend to that man as it is. It is necessary for it to soften, to discard some part of its intensity, to become acceptable and digestible for mankind until it reaches that man. Because of this, it needs go through some transformations, be filtered through some filters, to become cruder. And these are done in the milieus we have just mentioned. So, each field of influence that will ensure this is a transformation station, that is, a transformer for the incoming influence. Again, in this passage, we learn more about how the system works. The important point here is, it is necessary for it to soften, to discard some part of its intensity, to become acceptable and digestible for mankind until it reaches that man. If you remember, we had talked about the medium of this book, Mr. Attila, in our 39th video, 2 weeks ago. I had told you that Mr. Attila didn't go into trance and start speaking this knowledge right away. No. First, a being in duty was assigned to Mr. Attila for preliminary work which included modulation of the influences through Mr. Attila's dreams, acclimatizing him to higher influences, etc. Then, that being is replaced by another field of influence. And Attila had told us that when the first being is replaced, he felt an emptiness and he felt deeply confused. And when this knowledge was incoming, he felt like he was under a heavy bombardment of light, visualizing the incoming knowledge and influence as beams of light. And he told us that Mr. Ruhselman gradually elevated him to the level of those influences, and only after Mr. Attila became harmonized with those influences, the knowledge in this book could be received properly. So, different cadres of beings in duty and different regions of influences get activated in this influencing process. And please remember that each human being is the medium of his or her own. Because we receive influences from our own being, we are always trying to reach higher levels or regions of influence than our current level, either by inner work or other practices suitable to our reality and lifestyle. So, please remember that, next week, as we read further pages on mediumship, whenever you hear the word medium, please know that we can also say the word human. Because we exist through all those myriad levels of influencing among all beings. So, in that sense, what we read and learn about the mechanism of mediumship is also valid for our own mechanisms.
Alright, before we say goodnight to our dear friends, let me give a short reply to a question asked this evening, which was, do we contact spirits in spirit seances? No, we don't. We, beings, cannot have direct connection to spirits. In this book, we read that only contacts that are allowed to us, to embodied beings are with, and the beings that beings in duty allow us to be communicated with. Please watch our previous videos of this series. Then you will find many answers to your question.
Alright, we wish you a good week until next Monday evening. Thank you very much for your interest and attendance.
Good evening, everyone. Hoping to see you all next week.